All right, so today we are going to go through numbers 1 through 25 on your midterm review sheet. My goal is to make sure that you guys have all of the correct answers. So as we go through this, if you see that something is not correct on your paper, please erase it and fix it, okay? This particular portion that we are going over today, you may not use a calculator. So if you have a calculator out right now, you don't need that. On your midterm, there will be like half of it that you get to use a calculator and the other half you do not. So right now we're going to practice with this section of not having a calculator since you won't have a calculator on your midterm. I want to talk to you about absolute value. It's been a long time since we talked about this way back in chapter 1. Absolute value is trying to figure out how many spaces away from 0 a number is on the number line. So let's just imagine, this is not one of our problems, but let's imagine that we have the absolute value of 3. This right here is a 3. Guys, how many spaces away is the 3 from this 0 right here?
3.
It is 3 places away. So this is 1, 2, 3. So the absolute value would be 3, okay? Let's talk about another one. Let's imagine instead that I had the absolute value of -4. It is asking me how many spaces away this -4 is from that 0. Guys, how many spaces would it take me to get there? 4 spaces, okay, or 4 hops. You are never allowed to have a negative absolute value. So the absolute value of -4 would just be 4 because it is 4 spaces away from a 0. So let's talk about this one that we have up here. Do you guys see the negative on the outside of the absolute value mark? Yes. What do you think I need to do with this negative right here?
Keep it.
Keep it. Drop it down. Okay, so we're going to drop that down. Now let's just focus on this. What is the absolute value of -1 3/4? It is just plain old 1 3/4. So because of that negative sign that was on the outside of the absolute value, we drop it down, which means our answer is -1 3/4. Okay, let's go to the next one. Guys, what's the absolute value of -3.2?
3.2.
It is 3.2. Box it in. All right, looking at this next one, it says find the sum or difference of the integers. There's a lovely song we learned at the beginning of the year. Sing it with me. Same sign, add and keep. Different sign, subtract. Take the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. All right. There's also a little saying. Let's see if we remember the saying. Every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. Very good. So looking at the first one, it says 32 minus 48. Kaylin, do I have the same sign there or a different sign? Those are different signs because the 32 is a positive. Because it's different signs, what do I need to do with them, Kaylin? Very good. Subtract. What is 48 minus 32? 16. Now I want you to take the sign of the larger number. Which is that?
32.
No.
48.
48. The bigger absolute value. So is my answer going to be positive or negative?
Negative.
It is going to be negative. Now, if you didn't get that when you did this on your own, just erase it and fix it. Remember, this is going to be your study guide, so you want to use this to help you. Let's go on to the next one. Anson, do you remember what it's called when there are 2 negatives side by side with no number between them? Who can help him? Lexi, what is it?
Monster positive.
Okay, we're going to turn it into a monster positive, but this is a double negative. Remember, when 2 negatives are side by side, you want to turn that into a monster positive. So now this means -37 plus 15. Anson, same sign or different sign? Different sign. Subtract and take. So Anson, what is 37 minus 15? Not 12. 7 minus 5 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. Take the sign of the larger number, so what's the answer? -22 is correct. All right, numbers 5 and 6 says to find the sum or the difference of the rational numbers. When I am adding and subtracting fractions, do I need a common denominator, yes or no? Yes, I do. Zariana, what would my common denominator be? 8 is correct. Now, before I can add those together, what should I do with this mixed number?
Change it into
I'm going to change it to an improper fraction. So if you remember, we are multiplying. First off, if this is a negative mixed number, we are going to have a negative improper fraction. So guys, what is 8 times 1? 8. And then add that to, what would that be? 10. So we get negative 10/8 plus 3/4. Brandon, what is my common denominator? 8. So I've got to turn this 4 into an 8. So I'm going to multiply it by 2 on top and 2 on bottom. So now I've got negative 10/8 plus, Brandon, what does this 3/4 become? 6/8 is correct. Adam, same sign or different sign?
Different.
Okay, same sign, add and keep, different signs, subtract and take. Adam, what is 10/8 minus 6/8?
Negative 4/8.
Good job, 4/8, and he took the sign of the larger number. Now, Zion, can I reduce negative 4/8? Yep, what would it be? Okay, keep that negative, negative 1/2. Now, your midterm is going to be a multiple choice exam. Here's the deal with multiple choice. If you were to see this answer right here as an option, would that be the correct answer? No, why not?
Because
It's not reduced or it's not simplified. You always have to make sure that you simplify all of the answers. All right, let's go on to the next one. Lexi, negative 5.35 plus negative 4.02. Do you have the same sign or a different sign?
same sign.
Very good. This is a negative number and this is a negative number. Because you have the same sign, what should you do?
Add and keep.
Add and keep. So we're going to add 5.35 plus 4.02. When you add that, Lexi, what did you get?
Negative 9.37.
You are correct. Okay, once again, remember she kept the sign, so she's got negative 9.37. All right, as I walked around and I looked at this next section when I was checking the homework, there were a lot of people who did not show me any work. I want to see work underneath these kinds of things so that helps me to see that you understand what these things mean. There is no work to do with this first negative 8. That's simply just a negative 8. But Gerard, do you know what the absolute value of negative 8 would be? 8. Good job, because that's 8 spaces away from a 0. So Gerard, read it to me from left to right. What should I say? You are correct. All right, going on to the next one, Adam. What is the absolute value of 0.5?
0.5.
0.5 is correct. So now I've got 0.5 and 3/4. I cannot compare these because one of them is a decimal and one of them is a fraction. So let's turn them both into decimals, okay? So this first one is going to be 0.5. Does anybody know what the decimal is for 3/4? What is it, Zariana? Okay, 0.75. All right, because that has two numbers, you can always add in a 0 right here. But guys, 0.50 and 0.75, what should it say reading it from left to right? 0.50 is less than 0.75. All right, so it's always good to make sure that they are in the same kind of units. They're either both fractions or they're either both decimals when you compare them. Next one, evaluate the expression when h equals negative 3, w equals 5, and y equals 6. Repeat after me. Plug it in, plug it in.
Plug it in, plug it in.
Caleb, instead of h minus y, what should I write? Excellent. Caleb, do you have the same sign or a different sign? Okay, remember, same sign, add and keep. Add the numbers, keep the sign. Caleb, what'd you get? Negative 9 is correct. On to the next one. Anson, plug it in, plug it in. Negative w plus h. Five plus negative 3. There's one thing I want you to write differently there. Can you think of what it is, Anson? Good job. If there was a negative here to start with, we've still got to bring that negative down. Anson, do we have the same sign here or a different sign? Same sign. Add the numbers, keep the sign. What's your answer? Negative 8 is correct. Who would say you got both of those two correct? If you did not, are there any questions for me? All right, let's flip the page and move on to number 11. Number 11 is asking us to find the product. Here's what I want you to do. On just with your pencil, I want you beside it to write this, the even and odd rule. Whenever we are multiplying or dividing, we have to use the even and odd rule. If you remember, when you have an even number of negative signs, your answer is always positive. If you have an odd number of negative signs, your answer is always negative. So let's focus on this one right here. Brandon, do I have an even or an odd amount of negative signs? An odd. So my answer has to be what? Positive or negative? Negative, and what's the final answer? Negative 15 is correct. Moving on to the next one. Girls, do I need to find a common denominator when I'm multiplying fractions? No, you only need that whenever you are adding or subtracting fractions. This is the one time that we are allowed to cross-reduce when we're multiplying. Kaylin, can I cross-reduce anything here?
The 8 and the 4.
What do they become?
The 8 becomes a 2 and the 4 becomes a 1.
Good job. Anything else?
The 3 and the 12.
And what do those become?
The 3 becomes a 1 and the 12 becomes a 4.
Excellent. Go ahead and multiply that across and tell me what you get. Remember, you're going to multiply the numerator first. What's 1 times 2? There you go, 2/4. And because it was a negative, your answer is negative.
Negative 1/2.
Very good. Notice she didn't leave it at that answer. Instead, she reduced it all the way down to negative 1/2. Let's go on to the next one. I want you just to figure out if the answer is going to be positive or negative. How many negative signs do you see? 2. That's an even amount, so the answer has to be? It has to be a positive answer. How many of you would say you did put a positive answer? All right, Anson, what is 4 times 2? Okay, so that's going to be a negative 8, but if we're just looking at it as positive, so we've got 4 times 2 is 8. Class, what is 8 times 3? 24. Okay, and then we already knew the answer had to be positive because there were 1, 2 negative signs, and that's an even number of negative signs. All right, you also could have done it working from left to right, knowing negative 4 times positive 2 is negative 8, and then you would still be multiplying by negative 3. Either way, you would find out that your answer is positive 24. On to the next one, number 14. Raise your hand if you would say the answer is negative 9. Raise your hand if you think the answer is positive 9. Okay, what does negative 3 squared mean?
Negative 3 times negative 3.
Good job. It's negative 3 times itself. I want you to, if you did not put this work in there, I want you to write that for me, because that gives you a good visual as you're studying for your midterm to know, oh, there are 2 negatives here, so my answer has to be positive 9. Next one, Gerard, negative 9 divided by 3, what's the answer? Negative 3 is correct. Moving on to the next one. Guys, when I am dividing fractions, do I need a common denominator? No. Instead, am I allowed to divide fractions? No. Does anyone remember what method I have to use when I'm dividing fractions? KFC. Please take out your pencil and I want you beside it to write KFC. Just put a little cloud around it so you know I have to keep the first one, flip the second one, and change the operation. Brandon, is my answer going to be positive or negative? It is going to be a negative. I know that for sure. So sometimes I like to just kind of write the answer there with a negative there so I don't forget about that. Brandon, can I cross-reduce anything?
No. Yeah, so you cross out the 4, put a 1 in there. You cross out the 8 and put a 2.
Good job. What about the 3 and 9?
Oh, no. Oh, you cross out the 3. And then you cross out the 9 and put a 3.
Very good. What's the answer, Brandon?
2 over 3.
2 over 3, and then we already know the answer needs to be negative, so my answer is negative 2/3. The next section asks us to write the mixed number as a decimal. The first thing I want us to do is to change this to an improper fraction. So if you remember, we have to multiply. What is 5 times 4? 20, and then you have to add that numerator. So what is the improper fraction? 21 over 4. Guys, what does this fraction bar mean? It means to divide. So we are dividing 21 divided by 4. Remember, there is an imaginary decimal point here. You can add as many zeros as you want. I'm just going to add 3. Bring that decimal point up to the top. Caleb, how many times does 4 go into 21? Not 6. 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract it and you get 1. Bring down the 0. Brandon, how many times does 4 go into 10? 4 can go into 10. Guys, how many times? 2 times. 2 times 4 is? 8. 10 minus 8? 2. Bring down your 0. Guys, how many times can a 4 go into a 20? 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. When you get a 0, you are happy because your work is done. Okay? So the correct answer, is this a positive or a negative?
Negative. No, positive.
It is a positive, 5.25. Now, how many of you would say, Ms. Vorpahl, when I look at this original problem, I have memorized in my head that 1/4 is 0.25. If that is you, you don't have to do all that work. Anytime you have 1/4, 1/4 will always equal 0.25. All right, looking at the next one, -3 and 2/10. Zariana, what would that be as an improper fraction? 32 over 10. Positive or negative? It is going to be a negative. So we know whenever I come up with my final answer, it's going to be a negative. Because if it's a negative mixed number, it still has to be a negative decimal. Now we're just going to come down here. 32 divided by 10. Put your decimal point and add some zeros. Zariana, how many times can 10 go into 32? 3. 3 times 10? 30. Drop that down. You get a 2 and bring down another 0. How many times can 10 go into 20? 2 times 10? 20. 20 minus 20? 0. Yes, we are happy whenever we get to a 0. The final answer is 3.2, but we know the answer has to be negative. So up here in your box, it's going to be a negative 3.2. Number 19, a shark is 60 feet below the surface of the water. So let's imagine, sometimes I like to have visuals. This is the water, and the shark is not there at the water. Where's he at? Below. So what integer represents 60 feet below? Negative 60 feet. Let's keep reading. The shark doesn't stay there. It swims up and it jumps out of the water to a height of how many feet above the surface? 18. So it's going to come up 18 feet. What is the distance that the shark traveled? Write an equation to help solve the problem. In order to find distance, you always take the bigger absolute value and you subtract the bigger number and subtract the smaller number. So what's the bigger number? 18 feet or negative 60 feet? 18 is the bigger actual number. So we're going to take 18 and subtract the smaller number. What's the smaller number in our problem? Negative 60. What do you see there, guys? Okay, I see a double negative, which needs to turn into a monster positive. So this says we have to add together 18 plus 60. Guys, what's the answer? 78 what? Feet. Now, here's another way to help you. When you think about this water that we have here, that would technically be a 0. That's at 0. In order to get from negative 60 up to that 0, it's going to be 60 feet. Doesn't that make sense? It's 60 feet away. In order to get from this 18 to that 0, that's going to be 18 feet away. All you have to do is add those two together to figure out from here to there, it's 18 plus 60. And that's kind of how you can find the distance in this problem. Next problem. The temperature is negative 10 degrees Celsius at 5 p.m. So we know we are starting at negative 10 degrees. 6 hours later, the temperature dropped by 13 degrees. If it's dropping, should I add or subtract it? Subtract. It's going down. It's dropping down. It drops down. How many degrees did it say? 13. So minus 13 degrees. What is the temperature at 11 p.m.? Write an expression to help solve the problem. Negative 10 minus 13 equals what?
23.
Negative 23 degrees Celsius. How many of you would say you got that? If you did not, that's okay. Here where it asks us to write an expression, that just means add or subtract with an equal sign. So we did that right there. But I would like to see this entire amount of work, not just an answer in your notes so you can know how to study for this. All right, guys, some vocab words you're going to need to know for this exam. Let's talk about the first one. What is a term with a variable in it? It is a variable term. If you did not get these, please put these in there. What's another name for a letter? Variable. A variable. Good job. What is the number part of the variable term?
Coefficient.
Coefficient. And finally, what's the number that stands alone called? A constant. How many of you remember us talking about those? Okay, so these are vocab words, once again, that you're going to want to know for the exam. Now let's talk about this. What are the variable terms in the expression 6x plus 4 minus 5 plus 7x? I want you to take your pencil and underline the like terms. We know that this is the x family, and these are the numbers that stand alone. If you did not underline and circle in your notes, I want you to do that for me, please. Now, this is asking us specifically for the variable terms. Remember, we just said what variable terms were. It is a term with a variable in it. So, Gerard, what are my variable terms? 6x and 7x is correct. Let's go on to the next one. I'd like you to once again underline the M family and circle those numbers that stand alone. Caleb, what are my constants in this expression? You are correct, because a constant is a number that stands alone. Going on to the next one, we're going to underline the D family and circle those constants or the numbers that stand alone. Kaylin, what are my coefficients?
6D and negative 3D.
Okay, she said 6D and negative 3D. If you go back to coefficients, it says the number part. So I do not want the variable there. So what should it be?
6 and negative 3.
6 and negative 3. Okay, so be careful on a multiple choice exam like your midterm. 6D and negative 3D would probably be an option that I would slip in there. So make sure you really know and understand what these terms mean. Let's look at the next one. Simplify the expression. We want to underline and circle the like terms. So help me out, Zion. What should I underline and circle?
Underline the 4R, the 2R, and circle the negative 20 and positive 16.
Excellent. Class, what should always come first, the variable term or the constant? Very good, Zion. What's 4R plus 2R? 6R. What's negative 20 plus 15? Negative 5. On the midterm review sheet, I saw a lot of people who then told me the answer was 1R. Is that correct?
No.
Why not?
You cannot add 6R and negative 5 because they're not in the same family.
They're not in the same family. Those are not considered like terms, so we cannot do that. Let's go to the next one. Let me have Adam underline and circle.
Underline negative 5y and negative 2y, and circle positive 6 and positive 3.
Very good.
And then negative 5y and 2y,
Okay, what is negative 5y plus negative 2y?
7y,
Add the numbers and keep the sign.
negative
Negative 7y. And then now you want to add these two constants together, and what do you get?
plus 9,
Plus 9. Can I do anything else to simplify this? No, I cannot, so that is correct. All right, so those are the only problems that we're going to go through today.